Alrighty, very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This particular session is going to be recorded. My name is Praveen Srinivasan with uLawPractice, and I am joined by my team member, customer success clientele, Gayatri as well. And please feel free to use the chat window at all times to ask any questions that you may have regarding the presentation. This is my third opportunity and pleasure to present Everything Practice Management as the basis of the oral presentation of the 7 obligations that you as a legal practitioner are required to keep in mind as you begin your practice as well as run your business. And this is based on the bookkeeping guidelines of the Law Society of Ontario. Okay. The hope is to use this presentation to guide us through the concepts that I'm going to then extend by using the uLawPractice as an example. So we'll use the slides as almost as a theory, and we'll use the uLaw application as the practical use of how do you put the theory into use. And what we've done is, again, this is going to be an hour session, and I hope I have your time till about 3:15, 3:20 this afternoon, Eastern. It is going to be recorded, available on our YouTube channel, but we'll also send you the link to you separately. It is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the province of Ontario. If at any point in time, if there is a particular subject area or a topic of interest, please feel free to use the chat to highlight that to both myself and Gayatri. Okay? Awesome. So what we've done at uLaw, we are a Canadian company. You can find us on the World Wide Web at uLaw.io or uLawPractice.com. We're essentially a Canadian company. We've been in business for just under 13 years. Based out of Ottawa, we've been serving legal practitioners across the country for these 13 years, providing a very secure, compliant legal accounting practice management and business accounting software. In addition to the software, we today also offer value-added services such as bookkeeping for our clients. And we only serve the accounting needs or legal accounting and practice management needs of clients here in Canada. And with compliance being kind of the heart of everything and what we do, what we did was we actually tried to understand the bookkeeping guidelines, the Bylaw 9, trying to understand what are the regulations, what are the boundaries that have been outlined by the Law Society across the country. But we, of course, started here at home with looking at LSUC. It was formerly called as Law Society of Upper Canada. Today it's called the Law Society of Ontario. And you can Google this, you can download it, and we highly recommend that you give it a good read. It talks about important aspects or components of information, data representation, and the way you are required to behave and deliver services within, of course, the conduct guidelines, within all of what the bookkeeping guidelines talk about, in addition to that as well. Okay, so overall guidelines. And we broke it down into, I would say, consumable bites of 7 different obligations that we want you to take away. And the number 7 is significant because, like 7 days of the week, we have 7 menu options in uLaw as well, and hence the 7 different professional obligations. So it kind of sticks in your head. Okay? And the hope over the next 45 minutes or 50 minutes is to take you or walk you through these obligations. There are certain things that we do as a product and can help deliver these obligations on your behalf. Of course, we request you to help us by providing relevant data in a timely manner to provide you with the data representations that you need. There are, of course, other aspects of these obligations that you're going to need other apps or services or methodologies to manage, such as time management, personal management, professional management, etc. Okay, so we'll definitely look at all of these seven different obligations. I'll start with the client intake service and communication. It's one of the first and fundamental steps that the Law Society talks about. And here are some of the highlights of the obligations expected out of you as a legal firm, whether it's a solo practitioner running the firm or if it's a large-size law firm, the obligations remain to be the same. Of course, the magnitude and the volume of information that's being captured vary based on the sizes. One of the first things that the Law Society talks about is imagine you entertaining a customer request, a client intake, or an initial interest, even if it's from quote-unquote a ghost client, someone who's really interested in working with you, gives you a lot of information, and then kind of disappears, as the term ghost is meant to mean. The client intake process, then moving into the service delivery and the correspondence or communication are combined, or we have combined them into one obligation. This is where we talk about what are the steps that you need to take as you entertain that first customer intake. Now today, because of the advent of technology, you have many different channels through which you're able to intake that client. You could have a Facebook page, you could have a LinkedIn page. Of course, we all recommend a website. It's easier for customers to reach out to you if needed. Today, legal firms have client intake forms right on their own website. You may have a document that you share after you have done a certain level of verification of this customer, maybe some level of screening. Send them a document, have them input that document so that you can then enter it into your system. So there are different methodologies in which information is captured and then utilized by you and your legal firm to move forward. But what are the important steps that you need to take with that information once you have it? The first that the Law Society talks about is ensuring that you have a process through automation, semi-automation, or manual services, the ability for you to capture or record in detail all of the calls and consultations that you have with your customers. So that's step one. So right from first name, last name, AKA name, phone number, correspondence address, maybe even an email today, whatever information you can capture. And as you've created context for what that particular client intake was for, what level of matter are they looking for you to represent, taking next series of steps to entertain that client furthermore in the workflow. As soon as you've entered all that information, the obligation talks about the next step, which is ensuring that you're doing what's called as a conflict check. There are two components of the conflict check. First is what's called the conflict search or conflict check. The second aspect is a report. And then these reports are templatized. They're provided as good examples or guidelines by the law societies. And what we've done at uLaw is we've taken that guideline and we've pretty much given you a report right within that same template that's expected out of you as part of your audit. And this conflict report or conflict check report is something that you attach with each and every client, because that's the document that you are now presenting when being asked for or otherwise as a validation for how you determined the conflict scenario and what you've done as next step based on your understanding of the conflict. Okay? And this is primarily, as you probably better appreciate it, is for confidentiality and ensuring that there are no conflicts in representing this client, or if there are conflicts, you are fully aware of the consequences, and if you are going to move forward with creating a matter for this client, the reasoning that you are providing for that. We'll look at both the conflict search and the report as I get into the product demonstration. So first two steps, capture all the information, make it easier on your customer or yourself or your frontline members to enter this information. Second, based on that information that you've just received, ensure that you're able to do a conflict search before you move on to the next step, which is creating a file or a matter for that particular client. Okay? Let's take a quick example. I'll do a quick segue into uLaw. I believe you all have access or should have access at some point to your own uLaw accounts, and we're here to help and guide through that process. But you would essentially have a screen such as this, which is really our landing page or our dashboard, as we call it. And the first step, as I mentioned before, there are 7 menu options you can see on the left. And the second option is where you are able to enter client information. It's called contacts. And the reason why it's called contacts in uLaw is we allow you to use this as your CRM or mini CRM to not only enter customer information, but also information of parties or other companies or individuals that are all participating as part of your overall legal firm's experience. Okay, so it's not just the client, it could be another legal representative, it could be pretty much any business or individual that you come across in your legal firm's life. So let's go ahead and say add new client. You can see all these hot buttons are available to you to make those tasks faster. And I'm going to say this is Ms. Ileana De Souza. Let's say her AKA name is Lily. You can add more information. We capture important pieces of information that's important for Law Society audits, such as the source of contact, which is essentially how did Ms. De Souza get to know you, the legal practitioner. And you can see here I'm using a fictitious legal firm name called Roger Moore. It's essentially his uLaw account. And let's say this was part of a Facebook campaign. Okay. So one cool thing that we've started to include, and this is part of our innovation and I would say investment into this platform, is the ability for you to use voice instead of text. Okay, so I could, instead of Facebook campaign being typed in, I could actually just talk it out. And we've implemented this on a web version across dockets as well. Just as an example, Facebook campaign. I guess not. I'm going to try and use this in a different scenario. But let's say this is the Facebook. I can add an address. I think that's just a little property, and I need to check within my Chrome browser. That's all. All right, I'm going to make this the mailing address and add a phone number. So we've not yet gone to the detailed recording and consultation, but you can always do that here in the notes. Right? I'm just going to. So even if this is just an interim inquiry, you can add all that information in this particular note. And you go ahead and click Save. So you've not yet created a matter because you still haven't determined the conflict search. So that's kind of the next step. So click Save, and you can see in the middle of the screen it says Saving Contact. What it does is uLaw is saving this piece of information in our cloud database, which is Canadian hosted. The data is very much in Canadian soil across Montreal and Ottawa. And here's our customer, Ileana De Souza. And in the notes, you can see all of the recording of information that's necessary for either yourself or someone else in the frontline staff to move forward. Okay. The next step, before we create a matter, right under the action button is what's called as a conflict check. I go ahead and click on it, and if you leave all of these checkboxes unchecked, it just checks for the first name, last name, and just a conflict check on the name. If you want to go one step further and you want to check if you've ever created a matter for someone such as Ileana, then you can say check on matters. If you want to go one step further and see if you've come across someone by the name Ileana, even if it's in a different matter, you can go ahead and do that as well. That's a good example is if you met with Ileana as a witness in a completely different matter, but you still were able to get some information about her, or maybe you've docketed that as part of an information, we're able to bring that back to you. So uLaw does a very thorough conflict check, and we also date stamp it as per the Law Society's guidelines. So as of 8th February, this is the status, and this is the information that you're basing your judgment on conflict searches. So, for example, there's a couple of the Souzas, Samantha and Kim. You can do some further due diligence. You can go into our quick view, which is a fast, easy way for you to search for files. So you could say the Souza, and if there is any relevant information, you can see for Kim and Samantha in 2020 we had created some files. You can investigate further. You can go into the matter and really see if this makes sense. This is a landlord and tenant board matter for Sam and Steffi. So you can really understand if there's any conflict or not. You can go search for the customer information here as well. So uLaw does provide a pretty solid search functionality, both at the file level as well as the contact or client level. Okay? All right, here's this next level version. There are no matters, and hence this is all great. Let's go back to our client, Ileana. So I clicked on it. I'm going to move ahead and create a matter for Ileana. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say this is a slip and fall matter. So you can use this text to pretty much represent what this matter is about, or this could be Ileana versus Boris or anything like that. Okay, and we click on the Save button so that you can save this matter as a brand new file into the uLaw system. I'm going to take a minute to move in almost into the next obligation briefly, and then come back into the service and communication. Okay. One of the obligations that I'd like to highlight is the file management. The Law Society does talk about the importance of file management and the importance of certain nature of how you manage these files for two reasons. One, ease of retrieval for you as a legal firm, with or without an audit. And the second, is most importantly, is have a process or a system to do these conflict checks so that you can check at a granular level for multiple files. So even if you are dealing with the same client, by having a process to have unique file numbers makes it and chronological and sequential, and if possible, cross-indexed, makes it easier for the conflict checks to be more granular and deeper. So what are some of the obligations in file management? One, ensuring there's a conflict check report as part of that file management for that matter. Ensuring there are separate files for each respective matter, even for the same client. Chronological and secure organization of electronic files. Personal recording of client interactions, all part of that client matter, so otherwise called as dockets. Some of them could be billable, some of them non-billable. Proper organization through cross-numeric and cross-indexing, and that is for your conflict checks. And uLaw checks each of these boxes. One, it creates a unique file number. It's date stamped, and it's easy for you to retrieve information. So the same D'Souza before retrieved 2 pieces of information. Now it retrieves 3. And you can sort this by date. Okay, so here's the more recent one. Fast, easy way for you to search for. And when the next D'Souza comes, what happens is when you do a conflict search, this particular matter will show up as one of the items that you would need to review before you do move forward with a matter for that particular D'Souza. Now, right away, you want to convert that conflict search into a conflict search report. And to do that, you can either go into our document generation and hit compliance, or you can simply hit conflict screening and essentially download the document. What we've done is we've pretty much merged a lot of the relevant information already in a template that's provided by the Law Society. So who within the firm took this call? Let's say it was Roger Moore. You've got all of the information, her address, her phone number, and you can now determine if this is a new client or if it's a new matter for an existing client. Okay. You can say search my practice management system. All right. You can say no conflict. Now, if there was a conflict, you can always say possible conflicts and just add a little bit more details about why you still want to move forward with it. If for whatever reason you find that there is a strong conflict and you don't want to move forward, then indicating your next steps, either referring this person to another lawyer or legal firm, and did you decline a retainer? So you can add that information if you like. Ideally sign this and file this. Okay, so from a file management obligation, uLaw pretty much gives it to you in a very natural state. But going back to our client take service and communication, the third after you've determined conflict is now moving forward to creating a matter, determining the overall, I would say, engagement scope that's well determined or outlined using a document called a retainer or an engagement letter. Ensuring that the financial transactions pertaining to that matter or file are well documented and actions are taken within a stipulated time. So ensuring that there is a proper determination of collateral for fees. So what is the fee structure? Is there a retainer involved? How much is that? Are you going to request for retainer top-ups after a certain time period or after a certain retainer depletion? If there is no retainer, then how often do you plan to generate an invoice? What is the expected days within which you want the client to make the payment for every invoice you raise? These are very critical standard clauses, yes, but it's important to have them documented in this initial document or letter that you sign between your legal firm and the client. And that's one of the important obligations. When you're being audited, there is every possibility for the auditor to ask you for a retainer letter for a random matter. So where is that signed retainer letter? That is the fundamental basis of the actions you take within the matter. And we'll quickly talk about kind of the worst case scenario. So ensuring there is a proper plan for handling various different situations that you may come across in your legal life. The last or the worst case scenario, or sometimes maybe the best case scenario, you never know, is if this particular matter or file or relationship with this client, business relationship, leads to a non-engagement. Okay? A non-engagement, there could be many reasons. One, first and foremost, let's say there is a conflict. It is still important on your behalf, and it's an obligation as a legal firm to communicate the conflict, but also through a document outlining and safeguarding your firm by saying you are no longer responsible for representing this client for this particular file or matter that they reached out to you for. So here's another sample provided by uLaw right under document generation, a simple non-engagement letter. Okay? You can sign this and file this. And when I talk about filing, you can digitally store this copy in your laptop. You could store this in the cloud. You can also connect the cloud storage that you have with the uLaw system. Okay? So we today connect with both Google Drive as well as OneDrive, and we'll get into this a bit later. Okay? So here's the option: Google Drive, OneDrive, and you can click on the savings or save button. All right, so when I talk about filing physical documents or digital documents in a folder, that folder could be, as I mentioned, cloud-based or even in your local laptop. Now, if there is a retainer that you move forward, it is being engaged, you want to move forward, then here are some of the important aspects of that retainer or engagement letter that you need to keep in mind. Clearly outlining the nature and scope of the matter. So if this is a slip and fall, let's call it out as a small claims matter, and the nature is that there is a slip and fall situation. Outline what the actual problem is. After discussing with the client, maybe the neighbor is suing or taking Ileana to court, or maybe Ileana is taking the neighbor to court for the slip and fall. Outlining the client responsibilities. So this is you outlining the responsibilities of Ileana in this matter, saying, I request you or need you to pay me a retainer as soon as we sign this agreement for $2,000. If you don't pay me the $2,000 within 10 days of us signing this agreement, then this agreement is null and void, and then send her a non-engagement letter. So outlining all of this in the retainer agreement makes it easy, clear, and transparent for both parties involved in understanding the boundaries and the rules of this file. Okay? And that's the expectation, that's the obligation. And in all of this, the fundamental basis, as we understand, we've been doing this for 13 years, one of the reasons why, or the primary reason why we think the law societies do this, is to safeguard your interests as a practitioner and business owner. Okay? Method and frequency of communication. So how often do you communicate? What are the forms of communication? Are there any risks associated with those forms of communication, such as email, text, WhatsApp, right? Are there any termination details for the retainer? So one condition was if you don't pay me on time, right? Maybe there's an engagement letter with no retainer, and you're expected to be paid within 2 weeks, the days of sale. All of that goes into these retainer letters. And what does uLaw help you with is, having been in business and having worked with thousands of legal practitioners, we have a library of retainer letters that we help get started with. So we start with the retainer letter. It could be simple, elaborate, flat rate. You can generate this in PDF or Word. We give you some samples. If you go into letters, hourly, contingency, some maybe even specific to areas of practices such as POA, right? So the wording, how it's outlined, all of that is very different. Okay? So here is an example of a retainer agreement. Again, you don't have to retype information that we already know. So it's captured the from office, your legal address, the client, Ileana de Souza, her correspondence or mailing address, description of services. And this being a Word document, you can manipulate with it. You can add, edit, delete information from this base template. And the last but not the least, the more recent enhancement we've done to the uLaw platform is if none of these templates work out for you and you have this magic recipe, the special sauce document, you can bring that document and we help you templatize it into the system as well. Okay? Alrighty, so let me jump back into my, and it can be very branded experience. Okay. So we've gone through the first two obligations, client intake, service communication, and file management, some of the important components of this. Now comes the next series of steps, which is including the financial management, that is the finances regarding a particular matter. We're not yet gone into the finances of running your business. That comes under business management. Any questions so far in these first two obligations and how that's reflected in uLaw? I'll take a quick pause. Please use the chat window to ask any questions you may have. Okay, so if there are no questions, there are two reasons. Either I was so good, there are no questions, or I was so bad I put you to sleep and you really can't get much. But thank you. I'll take the former for my own personal reasons. Okay. All right, so let's move along. Thank you very much. Financial management. And you again may already be aware of this. This is where we're making our money, right? This is where, like in Money Heist, we're converting all that bars of gold into little droplets. But there are, again, certain boundaries, certain regulations, certain ways in which the finances need to be retrieved, just like how there's a certain plan by the professor in Money Heist. And I apologize to bring this up. I've been binge watching it almost for the last 3 weeks with my family. Actually with my wife, but no kids are allowed for this show, yeah. So, and I was thinking about it, in day-to-day business, we pretty much do the same thing. There's a certain plan, of course, it's not illegal, but there's a certain plan of how we want to accomplish certain things. And the financial management of retrieving money from this customer and making our business sound solid-proof is going through certain series of expected outcomes. And what is that plan? The plan is the retainer letter or the retainer agreement. That is the plan that we set out for that particular file. Okay? That's, like how there are different plans, like Plan Paris, and there's, various names given to plans that are executed. Imagine each and every retainer letter being a certain plan specific to that matter, specific to a client. So, for the same Ileana, for the small claims, you may have a retainer agreement. If Ileana comes back to you for, let's say, a landlord and tenant board matter, for whatever reason, you may say, okay, I already know you. I've built a bit of trust. Maybe I don't charge you a retainer. Let's just go with an engagement letter. You don't have to pay me up front, right? So, but the rules have changed. The plan has changed. And the financial management and the obligations of how you retrieve, record, and report, these three important R's, is how the auditor is going to look at the story behind this. That's how the story is told, right? And that is important. So imagine Tokyo is telling you the story. For those who don't know Money Heist, I'm so sorry. But It's available on Netflix, so you should check it out. And so it's almost like Tokyo telling the story of Money Heist, how it went about, how did the professor do it. These documents that are both audit readiness as well as otherwise are telling the story to your auditor, just like the story is being told to us, about how did this legal practitioner go about executing this matter, this particular plan. What are all the documents that can further outline the specific nature of the documents and the outcomes of that particular matter. Okay, so I'll cut to the chase. We're talking about 5 or 6 important things here. First thing is ensuring that the fee schedule is outlined in the retainer agreement, and that fee schedule is then followed through in how you docket, invoice, and accept payment. Because what's happening is sometimes if you don't follow the plan, then the client might actually get frustrated. They may come back to you. They may not be willing to work with you anymore. So you may say, I'm going to send you an invoice as and when things happen. And let's say you failed to send an invoice on time. That could be a problem too, right? So it's important that you have a plan and stick to it and deliver invoices as per the scheduled agreement. So if you're charging $400 per hour, don't charge $600 on the invoice. Simple things like that. Those things happen when you're manually doing it, and that's why a system such as uLaw comes in very handy, because all of those simple things are automated. Stick to the fee schedule, make the fee rates as clear as possible, ensure that you're generating invoices on time and delivering these invoices. Make sure payments are being made on time. So follow up with your clients to ensure they're paying you on time. And once these 3 things are done, make sure you have a system of records such as uLaw that you can tell these things, so that such a system as uLaw can give you all of the documents needed to tell the story automatically to your auditor. What are those documents? Those documents are not limited, but at the starting point are the ledgers, the journals, and the reconciliation report that you are required to do on a monthly basis. At a minimum monthly basis, you can do it even on a weekly basis if you like. Ledgers, journals, reconciliation. Let's stick to that immediate 3-pronged requirements or output. There are, of course, other jurisdictional documents that may be part of an audit or may be part of the storytelling, such as Form 9A, right? So we'll get to that later on. But at least to start with, keep in mind there are the ledgers that could be trust and general, the journals, trust and general, both for receipts and disbursements. So receipts are trust payments coming in, disbursements are payments leaving that system, bank. Okay. And of course, the last but not the least, the reconciliation is where you're comparing what you've documented into uLaw compared with what's actually happening in your financial institution's system. So the financial institution may have a system of record, and they're showing you either online banking or through a paper statement of all the transactions that are entering and leaving your trust or your general account. You take that statement and then compare it with all the transactions that are entering and leaving your bank account as you have told uLaw. Comparing these two, finding if there are transactions missing, ensuring that you can do whatever best you can to, 1, equalize these transactions, meaning ensuring that every transaction that you see here is also available here. But if you don't see it, that's fine. Then you need to show the proper reasoning as to why it's not available and close that particular month or date times reconciliation. So you may sometimes carry a bank error for 3 months till you fix it, right? So the financial management is important, and that's one of the things we do best at uLaw. So let's say we've created this matter. We've signed an agreement and we've got the $1,000 retainer. Tell uLaw you've got that retainer. So you can go into retainer, as the label sounds, hit new retainer, and here are the important details that are important to the documents that we create as output. Okay? So the date, it's available and it's needed for ledgers and journals. The amount, needed in ledgers and journals. Okay? The method of payment, not needed in ledger, but definitely needed in the journal. So let's say this is a check, old school. Tell us the check number. Where does this money go into? Where was this deposited, or where do you intend depositing it into? Into your trust account if you have one. If you have multiple trust accounts, then choosing one, very important. Last but not the least, to ensure that you're very compliant and very honest, you can generate a receipt, a trust payment receipt, or what's otherwise called as a retainer receipt, that you can then send Ileana. So you have a copy, so you can create an additional duplicate receipt as well as a sales receipt. If Ileana wants another added copy for her accountant, you can have one for yourself, one for Ileana, one for her accountant. So here's yours, second copy for Ileana, third copy for her accountant. Get this signed, and just like these other two documents, file it within the system. Okay? Alrighty, so we've stuck to the retainer plan of initially getting that $1,000 deposit. Now, based on the plan that we have put together of how we want to go ahead and representing this client, we start docketing. Of course, this could be a billable time and material docket. This could be a flat rate docket. This could be a combination of flat rate and time and material, right? There's many different options. Let me see if I have my microphone on here. Okay, I think I have the microphone to my laptop on, so I'm going to give this a try. So let's say this is an initial client meeting that happened earlier today. At 10 a.m. I'll click on description. I really hope this works. I can click on the record. This is my initial client meeting with Ileana to discuss the small claims matter about the slip and fall. I can play back to hear this. If you like it, you can move on to the next step, which is convert that speech into text. And again, we use machine learning languages. It's not 100% correct every time, but we do our best. This is my initial client meeting with Ileana. You can see sometimes names are hard, to discuss the small claims matter about the slip and fall. How cool is that, right? This is amazing. You can move on to the next one. Deposited the initial retainer of $1,000 into the trust account and generated a retainer receipt. Come here, convert that speech to text. You can see for $1,000 we even add the dollar sign. So you don't have to type anymore, you can just talk into your docketing system. And we're hoping to get this into the phone pretty soon. That's going to make uLaw almost a game changer at this, right? We not only make you compliant, we are able to help you enter information into the system. So tomorrow, if this can work, what we're really envisioning is for us to say a legal practitioner can just turn on uLaw and then talk to it as if they were telling their assistant, saying, kindly docket matter number or file number 837282 for a docket. You get the idea. That's where we're going next. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and make this a billable time of 1 hour. Now, you can change the rate depending on what you've signed. You may have a base rate of $400, but maybe Ileana is a friend, or a Facebook discount of $250. By default, we include the taxes, but you can always edit. Before you generate an invoice, change this to a zero tax if for whatever reason you don't have a HST yet. Okay? So you have the 250 multiplied by the 1 hour of work for 250. You can go ahead and say court visit. Online court visited, documents submitted. I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. Okay. Now you can convert this into a flat rate if you like. So you can just toggle this button and make this a flat rate doc. So now you have a combination of billable time and flat rate. You could have pro bonos, and let's add a pro bono. I have another 10 minutes, and I'm going to jump into the other components of it. So let's add a pro bono, and I'll say document review. I'll just text it. Review of court documents. And I will say this is 0. I spent 2 hours doing it, but I'm not going to charge you for it. Okay? And let's just add a disbursement. And there's 2 ways of doing disbursements. And that's an important financial transaction to keep in mind. If you have trust money, and this is another recommendation we make, disbursements are not your money or your revenue to begin with. They are recoverable revenue. So if you pay for it upfront without the customer paying for it, then it's your duty to recover that cost. And hence, on paper it's revenue, but really you're just recovering the cost that you've already incurred. Sometimes, if you don't generate the invoice on time, or if your customer is in a bad mood, or whatever the reason may be, sometimes disbursements don't get paid, which means that becomes a loss for your business. Hence, the Law Society pretty much brought the system of trust, a retainer, where you can pay for these disbursements out of the money in advance, right? So you could go ahead and say add new disbursement and pay it from trust account. This could be a check that you write for the application fee to the Ministry of Finance. Coming out of your trust account, you can print that check. Okay. Let me just close this down. So that $250 or $200 in this case is taken right out of your trust account. No questions asked. The other way of doing it, which is what I've seen most of the legal practitioners do, is pay out of your general account, which means you are now paying advance from your own money and then recovering through an invoice or waiting for a payment. So let's say you're doing this out of your general account, and let's call this the court fee of $150. Ministry of Attorney General, coming out of your general account this time, not your trust account, and done. So now all the transactions have been recorded, and 2 more important things to do is generating the invoice as per your plan. You can do a pre-bill, so you can preview that plan once in your mind, see how the invoice looks like. In this case, for lack of time, I'm going to go ahead and generate the actual invoice. And here is the document that you'd sent your customer. Let me open up this invoice. This could be branded, this could be your logo, your labeling, all of that. And this is the important official document that's going to be your key to make your money. Okay? So here's all the information. Here's $250 per hour with all the things that we spoke about. The court visit, the financial document review, that was pro bono. The $150 of disbursements as a court fee coming out of your general account. And here's the trust payouts. You got $1,000 in, $200 was automatically taken as far as your disbursement. So we're telling the story here. So when an auditor looks at this invoice as an example, they clearly know how you articulate it to your customer, and they're happy that you have a nice process to be very clear in your service delivery. That's an important obligation. Right? And also, it becomes an important aspect at a later point when it comes to professional obligation, right, about conduct. All right. Last but not the least, you do the trust transfers. Again, I don't want to get granular here, but you make your money by doing your trust transfer called the pending trust transfer. Because again, you've generated the invoice, great job, but till you move that eligible money from trust to general, you haven't made your own revenue. So last step, let's do that. Apologize, having some challenges with my internet today. So move trust to general. Let's say write a check. Or if you do electronic fund transfer, here where we get interesting, we are also able to give you a Form 9A, which is a compliance storytelling document needed as well. So as long as you can tell uLaw the transactions that have occurred in a timely manner and take actions such as generating an invoice and doing your trust transfers, of course you would do it in real life too, eh? But you're just telling uLaw that you've done it or you're going to do it at a time. Then you're pretty much done. Then comes your financial obligations. That is a breeze because that's what we've been doing. So if I were to generate a trust ledger for the month of February, it's a click of a button. So here's Ileana De Souza. You've got the $1,000 coming in earlier today. $200 left this trust account direct as part of the disbursement for the application fee. And then you did a trust transfer, and that's the reasoning why money was removed or dispersed out of the system. And you have a running balance, which is very critical. And this is the exact template that's needed by the Law Society for storytelling, leaving the trust with zero balance. And the same thing is applicable to the other side of the fence. So money coming in. So today, this is a two-sided ledger. How they say there's two sides to a coin. So in financial management, you have two sides to a financial transaction. If money left a bank, it's gone into another bank, right? And hence, you have the other side of the bank telling you that is correct. Through that legal invoice that I generated called 3397, I received $650 and $150. $650 was my legal fees. $150 was the disbursements recovered for the court fee with no taxes. You can clearly see there are no taxes involved, which is critical. That was moved in, and that's $800 that you retrieved into your general account. All good, and you can do your reconciliations right here, but I'll skip that for today. Only because of time, but ideally you should be able to do your general reconciliations right here. Click General, click Trust, open your bank statement, and every trust-related transaction that you've entered into the uLaw system is available here. So you can click on Date, and you would see it here. So here's the $1,000 retainer that we received from Ileana. Here's the $800 of trust transfer. Here's the $200. So you would account for this. So every time you check a transaction against your bank, you check it off, right? And then you do that. And then we actually have a very thorough reconciliation webinar on our YouTube channel that I would recommend you to review. Okay, so moving along. So you've done the financial aspect of it. What else? Professional obligation. So this is where one of the important professional obligations is sort of business management. Okay, I think I have another 8 minutes. I think I should be able to run through this real quick. Business management is where you as a business owner should be aware of all of the expenses, the risks, rewards, and have a strategy and plan, like how you had a plan for generating an invoice and following a retainer agreement. You have a business plan, like every other business, whether it's a bakery store, coffee place, a franchise, an IT business. Every business has a certain business plan, right? And there's risks, rewards, expenses, revenue expectations, and like how you have, bill of cost, certain rates, you determine your per hour rate, etc. And some of the important expenses that you need to keep in mind are, of course, you already know the Law Society fees. You already know your errors and omissions fees. Depending on a certain silo of practice, you may need to invest in certain products. You, of course, need a practice management system, such as uLaw. And we were very clear in our pricing. It's right available. It's, as a first-year entrepreneur, you're charged $34 monthly. After the first year, you can either jump into the $39 yearly price or $49 Canadian monthly price. So this is what you account for as your expense. And in Canada, as you probably know, depending on the size of your business, of course, if you're incorporated or if you're a small business without incorporation, solo practitioner, there's different ways in how you account for these business expenses. And long story short, you can write off these expenses, many of these expenses, as part of your business expense. Okay. Phone, that's an important investment, whether it's office, voice over IP, or cellular. Investing in a good document management system, or email/document management. There's two major options today that we all have, right? It is a bit of a monopoly, but it is what it is. You either have the Google side of the house and all of the wonderful apps they provide you. There's a Microsoft side of the house where they provide you wonderful email and their side of the apps for document management. So this is kind of the best of the two options we have. So keep in mind you have subscription models for that as well. And laptops, investments that you make. Now these are office expenses that you account for, and in uLaw you can use those. Typically you would use a QuickBooks or a Xero or some of a third-party business accounting system, but uLaw is purpose-built to manage those as well. So just like disbursements, you can go ahead and add office expenses. So if you've just purchased a laptop as part of your business, you can tell us, and not only do we allow you to capture the expense, we also capture the appropriate taxes. Right? So if you're paying HST, if you've paid it, you can always, it's business sense to retrieve it from the government. So how did you pay for it? So you paid $2,000 plus $260 in taxes. And we pretty much give you all of the important business management documents as well. If you want to know your revenue expense, even Law Society documents include that. So for example, if you go into your expense book for the month of February, and this is one of the biggest advantages of the uLaw system, Because when you generate an expense book, what the Law Society wants is not just your business expense. They also want to understand your disbursements that are expenses on behalf of clients. So here's a perfect example in February where you had the $150 of disbursement coming out of your general or court fee, but uLaw has now also helped you account for your personal or business expense of $2,000 with the taxes in that same report. If you had two separate systems for capturing these two pieces of information, then you have to do some manual work or pay someone else to do this acclimatization of the documents. Okay, the aggregation needs to be done manually otherwise. And here is the expense report. We even give you graphs to tell you where you're losing or spending most money. We also give it to you in analytics capabilities, but I'm not going to go there. So business management is very critical. Another important aspect of business management is where are you making your revenue so that you can invest in marketing channels specific to that. So we give you that information as well. So we tell you in the month of February, this is where you made your money. Small claims, 65%, Wilson Estate, 22%, and recoverable expenses being another 12% of the revenue. You can compare it for this whole year and see how each and every month is being performed. So small claims is still at a high 65%, Wilson Estate at 22%, which is pretty much the same because nothing has changed between the year and this month. Okay? Alrighty, so last two more obligations. Time management and personal management, professional management, so three. I'll go quickly on this. Professional management, again, participating in CPDs, getting your appropriate CPD hours. You have professional CPD hours, substantial CPD hours that you need to have once you become a licensed legal practitioner. uLaw provides close to 12 hours of free professionalism CPD hours a year. So please do register or check us out on our YouTube channel and you can just gain those webinars. That's one way of us saying thank you to the legal community or otherwise. The second, of course, the Law Society talks about participating in membership associations where you could share common knowledge, common problems, and there's a voice and an opinion to certain problems that can be solved as a group. Reviewing your legislation and case law, so that's out of the scope of uLaw. This is you ensuring that you're on top of your game as a litigator or otherwise as a practitioner, and that's something hopefully you do best in what you do. And the last, which is very critical, very important, and a bit sensitive, is ensuring that you're reviewing your professional conduct guidelines. You can Google it, or once you become a member, you are provided with that. This is where auditors or Law Society might come and interview your employees and ensure your conduct and how you're behaving reflects the way it's supposed to be as part of the guidelines. Time management and personal management. I'll step quickly into personal management. And the bottom line that the Law Society talks about in personal management as an obligation is ensuring that you're happy doing what you're doing. Because this is a very tough business. It's a multitasking, strenuous, time-consuming, I was going to say blood-sucking, but I don't want to go that far. But it's not as crazy as that is. But it's a Tuesday afternoon. So yeah, it is a very strenuous line of business. And you're here because you're a daredevil. You're here because you are passionate about helping others solve their problems. But there is a cost of managing business or managing clients. And there's a cost of doing it in a certain way that is compliant as per expected guidelines. And hence be happy doing it. Find the right help to get it done. And find the balance between work and life to enjoy both. And again, they talk about the ability to manage time, and I'm not going to bore you with any of the time management basics, but I will tell you that we provide you certain important reports such as pro bono by clients and monthly it could be by the client, could be by the overall practice. We could tell you on a legal standpoint, where are you losing money? Okay? So this is not where could I have spent money, where could I have spent the time. We have timesheets for that. But clearly you can see here, Eliana De Sosa, we gave her 2 hours of pro bono time, if you remember. John McEnroe has enjoyed 1 hour of pro bono. This is an important piece of time we request you to keep a tab on, especially as you get started early on. You might provide a lot of pro bono as maybe your differentiating factor. But it's critical to keep a tab on where that time goes, because time is money. If you're not asking for money, then at least keep a tab of the time being spent. Of course, you have timesheets in uLaw that allow you to capture time and money. So you can convert time and money into simple report by revenue by employee. If you have multiple employees, then this report is golden, because we can give you a great breakdown of who is bringing money into the business and a lot of important insights. So right away we tell you that you've spent 5 hours and 24 minutes of billable time. You had estimated it to be 6.5 hours, but you've only billed 5 hours, 24 minutes, resulting in a revenue of $2,000 in this time period. I believe that is for the month of February. Okay? And you can do that by client as well. All right, I know I rushed through the last 10 minutes, maybe because I spent too much time in the initial 4 obligations, but again, I hope this is your time well spent. So here's how that $2,000 was split. Indiana bringing in the $650. You can see the $150 is not accounted for as revenue because that was disbursement. So John McEnroe at $750 and another $650 for Sheely. So there you go, my friends. So we quickly discussed the 7 important obligations and right from client intake, file management, financial management within that matter, business management as it relates to maintaining office expenses, being aware of all those expenses, being able to report on those expenses, which uLaw does. And then the last 3, which we ran through real quick, professional management around CPD, membership, guidelines. Time management, specifically focusing on pro bono hours outside of the other time revenue, customer timesheets. And then last, personal management, thinking about a proper work-life balance by having the right tools and help that you need, and you certainly do so, to enjoy life and work at the same time. Okay? So with that, I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining. I know this was a full house joining, and this is being recorded and will be provided to you. So thank you. I'll open the lines. Yeah, so I've unmuted this so that you can all tell me how wonderful I am. Thank you. Oh, big mistake. Someone's on speakerphone. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and I look forward to hopefully our next session soon. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at support. I'm going to type this in at uLawPractice.com. So we should have this recording to you by, can we say end of day tomorrow, Gayatri? Would that be okay?
Will you email the recording to us as well? Can you email the recording?
As soon as
we will email the recording to you.
I will probably post it. I haven't received them yet. I had two webinars last week, and I have yet.
I'll send you the links. I was going to send it to you all together.
They're going to email me the link to the recording, and then I will post the link for you guys that you will have it available to you. So as soon as I receive the link, I will post it, okay?
See you with us today.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your kind wishes and words. Have yourself a great afternoon. We'll look forward to speaking to you next time.